I am Dave Henning with Fresh Start Podcast, fresh ideas for business and personal growth. And my guest today is Brian Penso. Brian is a public speaker and he's been a trainer for many, many years. He is the author of Who Are You and Why? The Evolution of You. Welcome, Brian. Great to have you with me, man.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
You talk about disconnecting from the old and building anew with the incredible power of choice. Get rid of your baggage. I love that statement. I've talked about getting rid of your excess baggage and trash, put the trash out and leave it.
Exactly.
What's your thoughts on that?
Well, a mind can't solve a problem on the same elevation of thinking that created it. So what we have to do is we have to look at where the negative comes in and the people that are not really there for our best interest. And we have to be willing to disconnect from those, start hanging with the people that have what it is that we want, not what we have. And then that starts to take us down a different path, and it starts to increase our elevation of thinking. But without the disconnection from the negativity, you're going to stay on the same path all the time.
Oh yeah, I'm with you there. I've talked to several people who got caught up in that, or even like on the crazy social media treadmill, and they realized that once I stopped paying attention to all the negativity and wasn't addicted to Facebook or Twitter or whatever, they shifted and found some positive resources that literally transformed their lives, quite frankly. Tell me a little bit more about your history. You've got an interesting story to tell, I know. Tell us about that.
Well, I was born and raised in the hill country in Ohio, and my dad was self-employed, worked for him, took a lot of wrong paths, hanging around those negative people, got into a bunch of trouble, and I was not focused. I couldn't figure out where I wanted to go because I was just bombarded with a lot of negativity. So in about 1987, I decided I had had enough, and I packed up all my clothes and I got in my truck. I had $250 cash in my pocket and drove 1,250 miles south to Houston, Texas. And when I stopped, it was like, what have I got myself into here? I saw more cars in a single day in a couple of hours than I saw where I came from in an entire year. So it was definitely an experience. I got here and buckled down and started hanging around with a bunch of really positive people. My brother's a doctor here. And with changing that group of people, I started getting a tremendous amount of really good information that I had not been privileged to. So that started sending me down an entirely new path. And I got into personal development, start reading a lot, starting the seminars and lectures and some mentoring. And then that's when my whole life just completely did a U-turn.
That's fantastic. I love that. Because it's real. It's not like a pie in the sky baloney kind of nonsense. It's actually real. There is power in positive thinking. In fact, Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, I think he wrote that book, The Power of Positive Thinking, and
Yep.
it's biblical. It goes back thousands of years. Think on these things. And that's another book out there. So what are your greatest influences along that line in terms of the power of positive thinking and getting around good positive thinking people? What would you say maybe one or two of your greatest influences of people that really impacted you personally, you think?
I would have to say Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill.
Oh, yeah.
There's The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle. Whale Done. I cannot remember the author. The assets in books. Books are the shortcut. Reading is the shortcut to success because you're learning from those that have what it is that you want, that have already accomplished the goals. So by feeding off of those positive people, I think that was probably my biggest wins was when I really got into reading and starting to look at a different path, because what I realized is probably 95 to 96% of the people in this world, they live a life that was chosen for them, not the one that they wanted, simply from bad information, armchair experts, negativity, being pushed down. And my big wins is when I got into those books it was a whole new elevation of thinking for me. And it changed my perspective from something is not either positive or negative. It's how we look at it. We can take a negative, which can be a learning process for us, which gives us better information to make better decisions in the future, because your brain is constantly evolving. I mean, the piece of property between your ears is the most valuable piece of real estate you'll ever own in your life, but so few people will invest in it. Me, I spent multiple six figures on that real estate because I knew that I had a long way to go. And the more I learned from those people, the faster I could get to the summit.
Yeah, I love reading. You know, my friend John Maxwell says leaders are readers. And of course, a lot of people have said that phrase, leaders are readers. And that's what it takes. You're absolutely right. I've read hundreds of books. And one of the ones that really impacted me when I was a disc jockey in Kansas City with the big morning drive show, and I needed to go make more money. And the boss says, well, why don't you go into sales? You're going to make as much money as you want. And I was comfortable talking to people behind a microphone and not being around anybody from my childhood shyness. But that was intimidating and fearful for me to go out and walk the streets and talk to business owners. And an old retired minister, Drexel Ferguson, gave me this book called The Success System That Never Fails by Clement Stone. And it changed my life. And Clement Stone was, by the way, the manager for Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. And he actually set up meetings for Napoleon Hill. And that book, just that one book alone, literally and dramatically changed my life. Between the chapters, he had this little page that said, little hinges that swing big doors. And I was impressed with that idea. It's sometimes the little things that make the big difference in our lives as we know and grow, as you say, develop from what other people have done and, quite frankly, their failures and mistakes as well as their successes. I love the fact that you did that. Tell me a little bit more about your book. That's really an interesting title. Why did you write your book?
Well, I realized through a lot of reading that people were misguided. And then I started to put the puzzle together that people start to establish who they are from about 2 to 4 years old, 2 to 5. That's when we do not have a filter on information. We can't assess the information as to whether it's valuable or it's not. So what I did is, through my years of personal development, you know, there's a lot of wonderful books out there, and that's how I got where I did. But I noticed that there was a lot of fluff in them and a lot of sugar. Okay. Yes. And I'm not a fluff person and I'm not a sugar person. I like the meat and potatoes. So what I did is I wrote a 142-page manual that someone can go into. It's A to B. There's no sugar in it. I don't tell you what you want to hear. I tell you what you need to hear. And I put it down so it's a short read. I've had people read it in a day, 2 days, 3 days. And then again, I've had people that bought it 6 months ago and haven't cracked it open. And they wonder why their life hasn't changed. But that's why I wrote the book. It's very simple facts. It's a step-by-step process. And anybody who gets into it and follows it, I guarantee you their life will start to change. My book is the stepping stone of a long journey. I've got plenty of books that I can refer to them to later on, but I've got to get your mind focused and straightened out. And that's why I wrote the book, because once they get through it, it's a game changer, and it opens up their mind and elevates their ability to acquire a higher level of thinking and better information in the next book. So that's why I wrote it, and I made it short and sweet, just real matter of fact, and A to B.
I like it. I like it. And I like what you said also, invest in yourself. And that's where people get hung up. And go, oh, I got to pay for this? Yes, you need to invest in yourself. I like yourself. I have invested thousands of dollars in all different kinds of trainings and seminars and flying around the country. But here's just one of the reviews of your book as an extraordinary book that took me on a virtual roller coaster of emotions. It twisted me, turned me, shook me, flipped me, pinned me, and left me burning to get out of the seat and making a change, painting outside the lines. Brian's book literally took me back to my childhood, the revisiting of several encounters, then brand new discoveries that I was able to put into action immediately. I love that. And another one said, Brian lays things out black and white with no BS. He's a straight shooter if there was ever one. Not only does he not have time for unimportant, but he also won't waste your time. I like that right there for sure. Pick up this book, get out there and start living your life, not the one chosen for you. I know people in the culture in California where I was, that parents were so demanding on their kids to somehow qualify to go to Stanford that it resulted in high school kids getting depressed and throwing themselves on the railroad tracks out here. I mean, it's nuts. The expectations that other people put on you, and that kind of was put on me way back when, actually, by my dear church friends who thought, man, you're going to need to go to college, this particular school in Boston. I was 17 years old. I wasn't ready. You know, I came home, worked for the Kodak factory for a couple of years. And by the time I turned 21 years old, I'm going, man, I'm getting really old. I really should go back to school.
Exactly. No, I think there's a lot of misguided people out there. And unfortunately, when people have children, I don't have any, I adopted one, but they don't come with manuals. They simply pass down the line what was crammed down their throat, but they fail to realize they're unhappy. They're not living the lifestyle and the life that they want. Yes, they may have money, but they're still miserable. But yet they take that and they pass that down to their kids. It's like our schooling system. Our schooling system is so outdated. It's amazing. They're still teaching people the same thing today as they did 60 years ago. Go to school, get a job, get a diploma, go work for the man. You're not going to get where you want to go working for the man. The man is there to get him where he wants to go, not helping you get where you want to go.
Yeah, you're trading time for dollars in that case when you're working I've worked for corporate jobs, and I fired my boss and went back out on my own, started several businesses, owned several businesses, drove school bus, built houses, worked at 10 radio stations. But I love it because I'm the boss of me, right? Yeah, it's risky. And when I was selling insurance, there's a phrase called risk tolerance. A lot of people want the so-called security of a job job where they work 40 hours a week for 40 years and they get a $40 watch when they retire.
Yeah.
And look back at their life and go, what just happened?
Exactly. That's why we have to wake up. I mean, everybody on this planet has the ability to do great things. I believe that in my heart, that every person that walks this planet can make a change. They can help people, or they can change their path at any time that they choose to. Now, there's nothing wrong with having that job, as they say, just over broke, but work during the day to pay the bills, put the food on the table, keep the roof over your head, keep the kids clothed and shoed. But when you get home, take that employee hat off and put the employer hat on and start doing the research. Look for a side hustle, look for a small business to start generating a cash flow over and above what you do during your regular day. And then as you build that, you can start to learn how to automate it with employees. And then now you're making money while you're sitting on a beach, or you're making money in the other business while you're at your daytime job. And there's not a person on the planet, I don't care how bad they have it. I mean, when I moved to Texas, I became homeless shortly thereafter, about 3 or 4 years. I got hosed out of a bunch of money on a business deal. I lost my house. I was homeless for 7 years. I lived in a concrete factory in the corner with no heat, no hot water, no money for food. I had enough to pay my bills on the factory, and that was it. I mean, that was the worst time of my life, but I had a choice. I could have just laid down and gave up, or get back focused on my goal, which is exactly what I did. And that's what allowed me to push through all of the bad stuff that happened during that time. I had a bunch of products stolen from a trade show that I did that I couldn't sell then and pay my bills. So everybody out there has got goals and desires. It's just, what are you willing to put up with to accomplish them? And that's what my book is all about, getting that stable point. And another thing that you were talking about, John Maxwell wrote a book called The 21 Laws or 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And he talks about a cap, and our leadership has and will cap out based upon our mind and how well we feed it. So when we reach a cap, we need to be able to knock that cap off and elevate ourselves again to another elevation, and just keep raising the lid and raising the lid. There are no straight rides to the summit. You're going to have help along the way and guides along the way and ropes to help pull yourself up to get to the top of that thing. And that's where it's all about, a change in that mindset, because there's, like I said, there's not an individual on this planet that can't do great things. It's simply a shift in mindset and start following the right people that can assist you to get there.
I actually met John Maxwell in 1988 in Boston at a Sunday school convention at a Christian college. That was before he wrote all these books, including the 21 Laws book. A bunch of us flew out of New England to San Diego, where he was living and pastoring a big church down there, Skyline Church. And we had like a private week of leadership with John. What is that? 1988 till now, however many years that is, before all these books. And years later, his people tracked me down, and I agreed to invest in myself again and join the John Maxwell team, and graduated in 2015 down in Orlando. I actually bought the license to do some training on that particular book. The 21 Laws book is so powerful, as you say, all the different laws, and they're totally relevant to what you're talking about here. Wow, that's fantastic. But John is such a great guy. Talk about a straight shooter. He is one for sure.
Oh, yeah. I've met him a couple of times. Phenomenal speaker and just an absolute wealth of information.
I had my picture with John from 1988. And when I went to see him in Raleigh, North Carolina in 2001, everybody was lining up at the break to have him sign his book. Well, I had my picture reproduced, and he signed it, Dave, keep leading, John Maxwell, and it's sitting on my counter back there. It's like a treasure for me to have, his encouragement. So yeah. My life has been around encouraging other people, and that's why I wrote my book on encouragement as well. But I want to know, what in the world do you mean by, coming from your book, what do you mean by proper failure? What does that mean?
Proper failure is you've got a goal that you want to do something. So we start to travel down that, and we make some decisions, and we're going to try X. It's a predicted journey, okay? Because you've done some research, and that doesn't work out. That's a difference of proper failure versus just willy-nilly picking a direction and going and say, I'm going to go do this, and you don't have any knowledge on it. So the proper failure is simply picking a process, following through with it, and not getting the results that you want. So at that point in time, now we have better information to make better decisions to change the process and move forward. But that's what I mean by proper failure. It's kind of a calculated failure, because a lot of people run aimlessly in the life with absolutely no direction whatsoever. But if you've got a direction, and I failed over and over and over, I lost, everything, my house, my girlfriend, place to live, but it was a learning curve, so I got through that to the point where I had better information and I could move on and hit the next elevation, knock that lid off and create a new lid. That's what I mean by proper failure.
Yeah, and one of John's newer books is called Failing Forward, which is along the line of what you're talking about. Calculated. One of the things that I've been practicing over and over again, especially lately with what happened last year and this year with my main business, was employee benefits, and nobody was in their buildings anymore for an entire year, so that didn't work too hot. But one of the things I've been training myself to say on many occasions and in many situations is, what did I learn from that? And I think I hear you saying that as well. What did I learn from this?
Right. If you want to double your income, double your failure rate.
Right.
Seriously, if you want to double your income, double your rate of calculated failure. And unfortunately, our world today has taught people to don't go out on that limb, don't take that chance, don't start that business. You don't know nothing about running a business. Well, there's no manuals out there on how to build a particular business. There are lots of good information on managing a business or the accounting aspect of it. But when you start building something, you can't just go get a manual for it. You've got to create the manual for your company as you build. And that manual will be modified by your successes and by your failures, because your failures are really successes, because now you've got better information to make better decisions.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It makes me think of Thomas Edison. He was loved and criticized at the same time. He tried like over 1,000 times to get the right filament for that crazy thing called a light bulb.
Yep.
And he finally figured it out. And then I didn't realize this till much later, that Henry Ford was actually an employee for years of Thomas Edison until he went off to build a car that no one had ever done before. And then Ford sees how they're making sausage in a sausage factory, like on an assembly line. He has this idea, wow, why don't I mass produce cars? What a concept. But all of that was, he didn't have a clue really when he started building a
Yep.
Model T.
Yep. Everything that we use in our life today, whether it's a skyscraper, whether it's a bridge, whether it's a cell phone, every one of those items all started with a simple thought. They were created in between the ears, and someone said, what if? That's how everything, the cars, the computers, the headphones that I have on, the Blue Yeti microphone that I'm using, all of that started with a simple thought. And everybody has the capacity to do that. They just got to sweep away the dust that they've allowed to accumulate and get down to the real thought process. And again, raise that lid again. No doubt.
The architect has to see that building in his mind first and put it down on paper first. And as you know, the process in construction is very detailed and very intricate, but it's also a step-by-step process. The painters and the drywall people can't come in until the plumbers are done and the electricians are done. And so it's something, just as you said, everything that was ever created was thought of first between our ears. That is a powerful thought right there. Why is it that many people are just plain stuck?
Because they were convinced they can't do better. It's that it goes right back to those armchair experts that gave them advice when they were young. So, you'll never make it. You're never going to be worth a darn, or, don't do this, or I've been there, I've done that. Well, when they're young and they don't have a filter, sometimes that subconscious mind can take that in as a fact. And that fact stays there. They can't see it. It's kind of like a rattlesnake. You can't see him in the bushes, but he's still very dangerous and he can bite you. So what happens is they hang on to those thoughts that they really can't see clearly, but they know that they're there. And that's why they don't take risks, or they don't go look for a new job, even though they're miserable. Just be thankful for what you have. I mean, how many times do kids get told that? Just be thankful for what you have. Well, that also says, don't push the envelope. Don't try anything new. Don't make mistakes. Just stay on that narrow path. Don't speak unless you're spoken to. God, I wish I had $1 for every time I heard that in my life. If I would have kept that as my guideline, I wouldn't be the communicator that I am right now, and I would not have built all the different companies that I have. So they're stuck because of their beliefs. And that's why we have to be really careful of, I ask people, why do you think what it is you're thinking? And it kind of catches them off guard. Well, I don't know. I've just always been this way. Well, how's that working for you? Is it where you're supposed to be? Or are you successful? Are you happy? No. Well, then why don't we take a look at that? Why do you think the way you do? And that is a question that very few people will ever ask themselves. And that's why they stay stuck.
You remind me of, I learned from Tony Robbins, it's called a pattern interrupt, where you just did that. when you asked, why do you think what you're thinking? It's a pattern. You got to interrupt their pattern of thought to break through. I had just interviewed a guy he calls himself the no BS coach in Chicago. And the reason he says that, he was a very successful lawyer, but he got mixed up with the Teamsters and got in with the wrong criminal crowd and was sentenced to several years in prison. He served 5 years in prison, but he came out first of all, he was blaming everybody else for what he did. And he finally came to grips with who he was and decided to make a change. He got out, and as a lawyer, he now coaches big CEOs of big companies. And he said he can basically do the pattern interrupt thing with these CEOs because they've got all these yes men following them, and they're micromanagers, and they believe that they're 100% right, and they're liars.
Yep.
The reason I mention him is he was talking about the fact that obviously we're in this huge shift right now from the industrial age when my mom and dad were blue collar workers. My mother worked for the Delco factory making windshield washers for Corvettes on the night shift, and my dad was a machinist. So we're shifting now from the industrial age to this information age, and it's hard for the culture to make that shift because we're used to, like you say, go out and find a good job. I had a great job at Kodak, but I gave it up to go back to school, which was a great move, but again, gave up so-called security of that job. Does that make sense?
Oh, most definitely. A lot of times personally, I think most people run on autopilot. They do the same thing day in. A lot of times they'll get to work. They don't even remember driving to work. They'll get home. They don't even remember driving home because they're on autopilot. And breaking those thought processes is so valuable because a mind cannot solve a problem on the same elevation or level of thinking that created it. And it just goes right back to, because I told you that before. We have to break up that pattern of randomity so we become the leader and we recognize where we are not following through with our goals. Because if you're not aware of it and you don't make yourself aware of it, you're going to continue to keep making the same mistakes over and over and over. And the definition of insanity is
doing the same thing over and over and thinking something's going to change. Did I get that close?
Exactly. I think it's doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Yes. I think is how it goes.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, either way, we both hit the nail on the head. They got it. So excellent.
So what should people work on first to get back on track faster? I like fast. In fact, that's my problem is I got to slow down. I'm going to write a new book, by the way, Brian. I'm going to call it Life and Fast Forward. So,
okay. I like the title.
Yeah, because, on a reel-to-reel tape machine at the radio station, when I used to use that stuff, we'd put on fast forward and I'm going 100 miles an hour in my mind. I'm a NASCAR driver in my mind, basically. And so I had to slow down, which is a great place to do it down here, by the way. Take some time for myself to meditate, to process things, literally to slow down in my mind, really, to see what creative thought does God want to put in my head today, and actually listen.
Yeah.
And in the process of that, guess what happens? The rest of this day, I accomplish that much more because I slowed down first. I got this little used bicycle down here with a little basket on front, and I don't have a vehicle down here. You don't need one. You can walk everywhere. But I got my cute little bicycle, and I'll get out there and ride around and enjoy the breeze and watch the waves and think. What a concept. Take some time to think. What would you say, back to our question, what do people need to work on first to get back on track faster?
They have to come to peace with themselves. You cannot find peace in the world unless you can find peace with yourself. Quit beating yourself up. Be willing to be a little vulnerable. If you're wrong, you're wrong. Admit that you're wrong. If you've been telling yourself the wrong things, stop it. Making yourself aware of your day. I mean, we have a lot of minutes in a day. Be very careful on who you allow to convince you to do things And also be very aware of what you're telling yourself. Because here's one that's going to hit you like a hammer. The lies and the manipulation that people tell us are nowhere near as detrimental as the ones we tell ourselves.
Ooh.
Yes, you think about that one, because we beat ourselves up more than any person out there. We wouldn't let someone else do that to us, but we continue to allow ourselves to do it to us. And that's where you have to start. You've got to come to a decision to say, you know what? Enough is enough. I mean, look at Colonel Sanders. He didn't start on his journey until he was 70 years old.
Yes.
Sam Walton, again, I can't remember what age bracket he was in, but he was down the road a ways. And look what he built. He built an empire simply based upon a decision in a new unit of time with better and more accurate information. So starting today, take note of the people that are around you. What are they saying and how are they saying it? That is one of the biggest things that we have to learn to do. We have to guard that piece of real estate that's between our ears. Do not allow people to manipulate it. We have a hard enough time stopping ourselves from manipulating. So we can stop ourselves by simply making a decision, picking up a book, doing a lecture, going to a seminar, or booking a seminar online. We make that decision that I have had enough and it's time for a change. That's where people really need to start.
I really struggled for many years with low self-esteem from when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, rejection. And my brother was the big athlete, and I basically sucked at sports, but I tried, and it was just a bad deal. So I realized I was the bookworm. So I became the debate guy in high school, and just went on a different direction. And that's when I realized I wanted to be a rock and roll disc jockey. When I did the announcement at school as part of the assignments and the Pledge of Allegiance, and my friends would say, "Dave, we actually listen to the announcements when you give them." So it encouraged me. But in the midst of that, it's kind of like the old Saturday morning cartoon. It might have been Looney Tunes or something, where there's a devil on one shoulder and an angel on the other shoulder, and they're both whispering. The devil's whispering crap in your ear, and the angel's saying, "No, you're not. No, you're not. That's not you." And so that's what I heard you just say is, get over it.
Yep. We fight two demons. You know, there's you have your analytical mind, which is your conscious mind, which is the one that you make a decision to buy a red car or blue shoes or buy the house that you want. But then we have the reactive side, or the subconscious mind, that's down there that records everything. It doesn't miss a beat. And there was a book produced called The Ant and the Elephant, and it talks about that, the reactive mind versus the subconscious mind versus the conscious mind. And, you know, staying focused on that, you can tell that guy, when he starts talking in your head, that you're not going to listen. I've heard people say that they put a rubber band on their wrist, and if their mind and thought starts to go to another direction where it shouldn't be, they snap the rubber band, which brings you out of that thought and back into a conscious thought. So you're making yourself stay in present time. You know, the past is okay to visit. It's just not a place you want to live. You know, and my grandfather told me many years ago, every man or woman who walks the planet has a cross to carry, which is true. It's how we deal with that. It's what we tell ourselves. You know, today was not so good, but tomorrow's going to be better. Every day I'm getting better and better at this. Even if you failed today, you tell yourself, you know what? Every day I'm getting better at this. And that's the things that we have to monitor, is what we tell ourselves, because that's truly the one that counts the most. It doesn't make any difference what other people tell you. A lot of people told me I would fail, that I'd never make it. I didn't know anything about businesses, but I own multiple businesses at this point in time. I had to learn it along the way because I made a conscious decision to prove them wrong and to learn what I needed to learn to get to the elevation that I wanted to get to.
What a powerful message. And before we shift gears here, I want to help you out and share your website and everything. But I just found this buried in a drawer. It's actually a shower hanger. You can't really see this, but years ago I went to see Zig Ziglar. I saw him multiple times, and one of the speakers was Tom Hopkins, the famous California real estate guy, and he handed this out as a gift. It's a shower hanger called the Morning Mental Wake Up, and I memorized it. He says in it, "I will win. Why? I'll tell you why. Because I have faith, courage, and enthusiasm. Today, I'll meet the right people in the right place at the right time for the betterment of all. I see opportunity in every challenge. I'm terrific at remembering names. When I fail, I look at what I did right, not at what I did wrong. I have clearly defined goals. I never take advice from anyone more messed up than I am."
So true.
I never let a negative thought enter my head. I'm a winner, a contributor, and achiever. I believe in me. That has gotten me through a lot of tough times in my life. Reading that in the shower first thing in the morning.
Oh yeah. I mean, what a perfect place to put it. I mean, that right there every morning is going to make a difference in your life. Your morning affirmations. What are you grateful for? What are you thankful for? You know, you start out the day like that, your day's got a higher probability of going a whole lot better. So that positive staying in there is just, it's tremendous. And that was a great idea. I mean, to give that as a shower hanger so people could take home and see it every morning. I mean, what a great idea. What a great idea.
Oh yeah, that was years ago, and it kind of got a little in bad shape. So I actually laminated it and then cut out the little hole so I could still hang it up.
There you go. See, there you go. You're just thinking to another level. I don't want to lose this thing. So what can I do? I can laminate it, recut it, and I can save it for another 20, 30 years or hand it down to my grandchildren or something. So
absolutely,
because it's going to have value 100 years from now as well.
Oh yes. And this has been a powerful, thank you so much, Brian, for a really powerful interview. And I want to help you. How can I help you? You've got the book, Who Are You and Why? The Evolution of You. Tell us where you'd like me to send to a website, perhaps, and people to connect with you. What can I do for you today?
Well, they can go to brianpenso.com, BrianPenso.com, and they can actually go in and download the first chapter for free. If they like what they're hearing, then there's a buy now button. They can go in there and click that button and get the rest of the chapters. But it's Brian Penso, BrianP as in Paul, ENSO.com. And thank you very much, sir.
And that's be the best way to get a hold of your book right there. They can get the first chapter for free. And, if all else fails, they can find it on Amazon, probably.
Exactly. Well, that link that's on that page will take them straight to the Amazon link.
Oh, great. Awesome.
Yeah.
Very
good.
I
like to give people a snippet, because this book's not for everybody. This is, I'm not going to make y'all feel warm and fuzzy and all of that. It's the truth. And if they can get through the first chapter, they can get through the rest of it. And that's why I did it. I want them to give an idea. I want them to get an idea of what they're in for and what's ahead of them. And if they can get through that first chapter, they'll get through the second and third and fourth and so on, because it goes pretty deep. And it is life-changing information. They can go to Amazon through the link and just read some of the reviews that people have left. I mean, I've helped people get out of corporate America forever. I've helped people start companies that thanked me. I've got guys that set reviews to me that, I've been thinking about starting a business for the last 10 years and I never did it. And I read your book twice and now I got it going. That's my payoff. I didn't write the book to make money. I made the book to give back, because what I also realized is the more people that I can help become successful and attain their goals, I will inevitably, by default, obtain the ones that I'm after. It doesn't get any better than that. I go to give, not get, for sure.
Awesome. Perfect. And the last question that I ask everybody before we say sayonara is, what was your first job? I actually kind of sneak peek of what you did early on. What was the very first job you had as a kid?
Well, I raked leaves and turned over gardens for money to go buy a bicycle, because my dad wanted us to work for a living and understand the exchange of hard work equals getting what you want. Yes. I've worked on farms. I've baled hay, mending fence, taking care of Appaloosa horses. I mean, I did all kinds of stuff. And then I went into journeyman meat cutter, and I was a meat cutter by trade.
Oh,
So
wow.
I've only had a handful of jobs. My first business I started was 15 years old. I started building spinner baits and fishing lures and selling them to the local marinas. But yeah, I'm 55 years old, and I think I've had maybe 3 or 4 jobs in my entire life. I've been self-employed the rest of the time because I prefer it. I don't like having somebody control my time or my money. I like to be in control of both.
Yeah, absolutely. That was that fishing lure story that I wanted to get to, which you highlighted. That you'd probably do really well down here in Tamarindo, Costa Rica, on the Pacific coast. A lot of fishing going on down here, but you need some really big lures for those swordfish.
Right, right. Yeah, that's a whole different ball game right
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
It's funny that you say that to fish. And my entire goal that kept me focused, even through all the hard times, being broke, homeless, and everything, was to fish professionally against my idols at the highest levels in the United States. And I accomplished that goal. I fished at the highest levels in FLW, PAA, Bassmasters. I fished against the people that I used to watch as a child when I was very young. I'd watch them on TV. Well, speed up 25 years, I was rubbing elbows with those guys and became friends with them because I stayed focused on my goal. And that goal there is what got me through everything. That and my trusty dog, Abby.
How cool is that? Wow, that is so cool. Well, Brian, it's been my pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much. I've made a new friend today, Brian Penso from the Houston area. Man, I really appreciate you. Thanks for taking the time today. Thanks so much.
Well, I surely appreciate your time. The pleasure was all mine. You have a great day down there.
Thank you.
Thank you.